And good morning. It's an hour early for everybody else, and the same time for me waking up. It's Macka. I'm back for the morning coffee, or tea, or in my case, mystery gin type liquid, possibly. And I'm here today with Trevor. How are you, Trevor?
Not too bad, Macka. How you doing this morning?
I'm still asleep, as we said. It's 2:30 in the morning for this, but we're here to spread the good joy of Liverpool Football Club, as the
Indeed.
evangelists that for the club that we are. So today's news, it's International Week, so nothing really interesting ever happens during International Week except for manager firings, which there seem to be too many this time. So, and managers are paying their mortgage at least for another month on those billion-dollar houses they probably own. But the first one we're going to talk about, the first story, is we have this story here. Southgate thinks Trippier is a better fullback than Trent Alexander-Arnold. What do you say to that?
No. Just to keep it simple, but more than anything, I think and I looked at some of his comments, it's something where it's, in my head, him trying to justify this past window where he didn't use Trent at all by diminishing his talents and making himself look like the choice was never in question, which is a bit off when everybody else in the world seemingly views Trent as one of the best right backs in the game. But no, just because you decided to go on your own little crusade with him, no, you have to say that he's down the list and that Trippier is better than him, which, hey, if that's his honest opinion, then we'll see who is willing to give him a job to put those opinions into further effect once the World Cup's over.
I mean, it seems almost that, Gareth Southgate, even I remember him as a player, is just a bland, grey person. There's nothing exciting about him whatsoever. But it seems that, getting to that European Championships final has made him think that he's possibly on the level of, a Mourinho, Benitez, Klopp, Guardiola or something like that in managerial talent. But as you say, Trent has been the best right back, possibly in Europe for a fair while, even if he's having a little dip in form. Do you think to an extent that Gareth Southgate might be diminishing Trent's abilities, not just to justify his own decision, but to try and appear like he knows what he's doing to the English media, who we know are sharks at the best of times?
It's the only logical explanation I can come up with, is that this is all him trying to paint this picture that he knows best, more than, like you said, that laundry list of managers who have done it at the club level and done it very successfully, who all rate him very high. And now he's deciding to go the complete opposite way to try to be the smartest guy in the room. And that's the only thing, because other than that, it's just somebody, it's like the drunk guy at the end of the bar going, you know what, this guy is my favorite, so he's the best in the world.
Yeah, clearly you've seen me in the bar then, because that's a really spot on impression. But it also, it seems to me like a good, talented manager would maybe have said something like, we have good competition for places in that position, and whoever is in form will get their chance to show what they can do. But this approach almost seems to be demotivational in nature, or if not in nature, then at least that's going to be the outcome for Trent Alexander-Arnold, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and what Timuchin and I talked about is it's great for us as fans to see these players get rest during the international breaks, just because there's some of these friendlies and the Nations League can just really add to the burnout. But in Trent's case, especially with now these comments, it's something where he has prided himself on being the best at a position that has a ton of competition for England. And to see him just not have any backing at all from the man who decides who plays and who's going to go to Qatar is just it just has to be demoralizing, and it has to be something where he starts to really reconsider getting call ups now. If Southgate comes and goes, you want to come, and why so I can just sit on the bench and they can show me sulking 15 times a game? What's the point of that?
I think as well, I mean, like if I was Trent Alexander-Arnold, be very good looking for a start and rich and not have to get up at 7 a.m. in the morning. It'd be fantastic. But also, Kieran Trippier, if I remember, before he went to Atletico Madrid, was not really talked about in terms of best fullbacks on the planet, or at least in the country, in England. It must be galling to, see some of that. You could probably legitimately consider a lesser talent than you, because they're probably as fit as each other. They probably have roughly the same amount of speed. But in terms of creativity and impacting the team positively, Trent is levels above. I mean, it would be almost like saying that Julian Dix is a better fullback than you. It must stick in his craw a little bit to think that, I should be on that field. And how much do you think something like that might either make him want to prove Southgate wrong, so increases his level of play, or conversely, it starts to affect his Liverpool form to think, maybe I'm not as good as I think I am.
Yeah, and that's what we'll see come this weekend, because in my head personally, I think that and that may be something that we just don't know how he responds to that type of criticism, because it's still something that is fairly new to us, seeing him get criticized in that manner, because it's not something that, since he's been up, has been a prevalent thing. So now you're like, okay, does he take it as a kick in the ass, or does he take it as somebody just finally shining the mirror on him that he's not as good as he is, when it should be that I'm making the all right. Rambling aside, it should have been from Southgate. This is a system decision, not a player decision. And granted, we've all yelled up and down how his system is, flawed, but it can never be worded as a player decision and not make the player think that they've done something wrong or they're worse than they actually are.
Daz O'Connor with his slices of toast making me jealous previously. He's made a good point there that Trent plays in a system that lets him get forward, while another player will fill that space. And it seems to me, just being an old codger who's seen England games since the 80s, that a lot of England managers will play systems often because of what the press tell them to do, because the media have such a stronghold over there, and never take into account the actual players they use, which is why you often see England teams have very rarely have settled 11 to 13 player squads. It's always kind of mixed. There's always debuts happening. Do you think Trent is a victim of being so successful in Klopp's very specific system, or more logically, but even still, it has to be seen, is Southgate just clueless?
I want to say it's a bit of both, but I think it's more towards the latter, because it's something where you see one Twitter clip where Trent's out of position, and you see, okay, the reason that there's no cover over there because it's Harvey Elliott or Milner and not Thiago or Fabinho, because they're injured. The guys that would normally go in and fill that space when he bombs up the field, and just that's how they play. And the fact that England doesn't have that adaptability to their squad, and the fact that the same thing up they do up front, where it's just stagnant, and then in the last 20 minutes, they throw all the kids who run around like banshees, and oh my God, they start scoring goals. No way. And I think it's something where he just doesn't, I don't want to say he doesn't get it, because to get to that level, you have to at least have some sort of tactical awareness. But to just see, it's almost like he is sitting on Twitter and like types in Trent Alexander-Arnold into the search bar, sees the first two videos and is like, oh, I can't use this kid because some troll football account put up a couple of videos, and it's like, oh man, is that who he really is? Instead of the countless hours of game tape that he has at his disposal. But I don't know. I want to say that it's something less nefarious, and it's just idiocy.
Do you think England hasn't done particularly well in the Nations League, the UEFA Nations League, which really are just a glorified set of friendlies in general? That's pretty much how they're approached. But even still, a team like England, a country like England, probably wants to always be seen to do well in whatever they're in. Southgate's words and his opinions really don't hold weight when you see how poorly they've performed in this particular group in this time around, do you think?
Yeah, it's like you said, they are glorified friendlies, but we were talking about in some of the other shows, it's this time of year, England would be playing tune-ups against the teams that the South American countries are playing and that the North American countries are playing, because that would kind of just give them a better gauge of common opponents going into the tournament. But now they've got to play Germany twice and Italy twice and Hungary, and then they go through all those, and they really don't get to try new things because they're just playing against this block of the same opponents doing the same thing over and over again. So there's no incentive for him to try anything different or make sure that what he's doing is 100% going to be what he's doing come the World Cup. I don't get why you wouldn't do more with these games, especially if you're facing the same opponents and you have a chance to give them this different looks every time. That would help both them and you. It would be mutually beneficial, and you wouldn't get situations like this. But I think he's so pig-headed and stagnant and just old world thinking of, all right, I got to have all of these guys play this same way that I've had them go for ages. And a lot of that is to protect Maguire in the middle. So you can't have Trent fly up or Reece James do what they do best. And you have to get guys that are willing to just accept a diminished role within the 11 to cover every other deficiency that he just seems dead set on keeping in the lineup.
It's interesting you mentioned Reece James there. Do you think the conversation is different had he been comparing Trent to Reece James, who is a genuine talent and definitely better than Kieran Trippier?
Yeah, then I think it's just a different flavor. If you like what one guy does better, but doing the same thing, like say, yeah, it would come down to like minutia at that point of, oh, I like the way Reece puts in a cross more, or I like the way he can cut inside. And then you'd have those really steadfast things that you could look and have as general criticisms and or operational things within the game that you can go, okay, I don't agree with him, but at least he has these arguments that could have a basis in fact, instead of just a blanket statement of this old guy who has no problem sitting over here and holding Maguire's hand and taking free kicks is a better player than these two guys that are getting nothing for minutes. And that's your justification.
We'll move on in a second, but do you think it's also possible that Gareth Southgate is protecting Trippier because he's the secret love child of Gareth Southgate and Harry Maguire? They look kind of similar.
God, now that's
That's probably not an image we should have talked about.
Yeah, and dream about something different.
Probably not an image we should have talked about this early in the morning.
That's a Photoshop waiting to happen.
That's a Photoshop waiting to happen. Was that Phil Jones? Maybe that's who I'm thinking of. But here's the next story. It's more of a rumor than a story, but it's still interesting nonetheless in terms of Liverpool. Fabrizio Romano confirms 3 to 4 clubs are interested in Naby Keita ahead of Liverpool contract decision. Is there a contract decision to be had? Do you think Keita is out the door at least 1 foot? Or do you think this is just the usual press nonsense that doesn't really have any legs, but it's got to be talked about until the winter transfer closes?
Yeah, I honestly think that he wants to leave. I think he wanted to leave in the summer, and they just didn't get the right offer. And by right offer, I mean one that wasn't super insulting and super cut rate, which I get it. You're not going to make all the money that you spend on him back just because of his now lengthier injury history. And when he has played, it hasn't always been top notch. But it's something where I think come this winter window after the World Cup, you have to really look at some of these offers, especially the ones coming from Germany, as places to just let him move on and reinvest that money into a midfielder that is more ready to go than the slow and steady Arthur has been so far, where they kind of have to just have him ramp himself up with his own full medical team to just be that right guy at the right time at the last minute. So if he goes, he goes. It's not going to be the end of the world for me, but that's definitely something where if he does, you have to have some way to reinvest that money immediately and in a more timely and better fashion than they did with this summer window.
And so we talked about Trent in terms, how he would react to a particular situation, in terms of his mentality and that. But do you think it's better for Liverpool to maybe cut their losses with Keita rather than have somebody sulking and hanging around for 6 months in what is a seesaw season? We can go either way. Like we've been so slow out of the blocks that we can either forge ahead really quickly after the international break, or continue as we are and be struggling to break into the top 4 for much of the season. Is it important, do you think, to maybe let a player like that go, even if it means losing a heap of money on the deal?
Oh, 100%. Because at this stage of the game, I don't think they're going to even come close to recouping that expenditure. And there's a lot of things that can be said about making guys persevere through it and get to the end of their contracts. But I've always been a proponent. If a guy wants to go and you can facilitate that and not bring disarray and discourse to the locker room, just do it, because the next time it comes up and some other guy wants to go, he's going to look at this and it's going to be even more combative, because they're going, all right, you took this guy and you made him jump through all these hoops and do all this shit. And then now what's my situation? I don't know. I think they should just find an offer and a situation that works best for them financially and for him as a player, shake hands and just be done with it in January.
It's an odd phrase to use for a player with his particular injury history, but in terms of thinking of his own value to the club, Keita hasn't really done what we expected him to do. So in terms of maybe holding the club to ransom, he doesn't really have a leg to stand on, often literally in his case, but he really isn't in a position to play any games at this point, is he? I don't mean that literally, because he's never in a position to play any games.
Yeah,
He's the only player who has the cast of MASH in his background.
The double meaning was very well interpreted. It's something where he doesn't have much leverage, but I think it sets a good standard for the club that even if it is a guy that doesn't have a lot of wiggle room or things that he can kind of, like you said, hold them to ransom with, it makes it more of a destination of if guys come in and then it's not really working and they want to go, and there's ability to let them go in good time and leave everybody in a good place. But if not, like if we just keep losing midfielders in droves and he has to stay, it has to be on him at that point to make himself available and not just be a Debbie Downer the entire time. And we've yet to see if he can do that, but hopefully in this last thing, especially if it's something where he wants to go get a big contract somewhere else on a free, then everybody will win at that point. It's just on him to make sure that he doesn't really try to, play any games while playing games.
Yeah, very well recovered there as well. Nice little wrap on that. But I mean, for us as Liverpool fans, we'd rather see a happy, fit, firing on all cylinders Keita, but we've been waiting far too long at this point to see that happen, haven't we?
I
think just to kind of wrap that one up is, I think you made a good point. It is really a case, isn't it, that if we have somebody lined up, it's here's your bags, here's the door. Thanks for what you did for us for those few games. But if we don't, we're in a bit of a pickle almost, because we can't lose a midfielder because we keep getting the midfielders injured, and two of them are almost as old as Keith Richards. And we don't really have the talent other than Thiago to control the midfield with the ball. So it really it's going to come to a crunch soon, isn't it, in terms of forcing us to make a move or forcing him to make a move, do you think?
Yeah, as soon as the window opens, I think those discussions need to be had as soon as you can, because waiting to the last minute, I don't think it's going to work this time. Didn't work this past time. You just need to get everybody on the same page and go forward, get him out of there, and get somebody back in. Yeah, 100%.
Daza there says Naby's a good player, but obviously he can't handle the hard training regime that Klopp has. But I would stretch to say I don't think he can even handle a game of hopscotch sometimes. He just seems to get injured so easily and so frequently. He probably would get gassed and knocked out at a high school soccer game. But let's move on to something a little bit more serious than the dilemma of Keita. This is something that's becoming increasingly prominent in the game. It's something we thought we got rid of, and it seems to be creeping in again. Richarlison playing a friendly in Paris, not even in Brazil, in Paris, having a banana thrown at him. Now, Richarlison is an annoying player at the best of times, but this isn't just player hatred. This is something that's really kind of growing back into the European game, at least. What do you think? Do you think there's a societal thing that's happening that's causing this? Was it just one idiot, or is there a culture brewing that football has to stamp out as soon as it can?
This is something where I really think these places have to get more just steadfast on getting these people out of every single arena and stadium that they could potentially get into, because it's something where, like you said, Richarlison's a shithouser, and you can hurl vitriol at him all day about his play and all the diving and everything. But when it gets to that level where it gets past football and it gets into the race and then just cultural shifts like that, where you are not mad about the game anymore, you're just mad about what he looks like. That's something where you just need those people as far away from just society in general. Just go. Let's just have a deserted island and just put all those bums there. I when I saw that, I go, I'm not surprised that it happened, but it's something where and it happens a lot here in the States where you see somebody do some dumb racist thing like that, and they like ban them for like a week, or they just kick him out of the stadium, and then you see the same idiot back there like 2 weeks later, and you're like, what was the point? Oh wow, you made him waste his $25 ticket one time. What message did that send? So as long as they keep letting these people, and they're never going to learn, and things like this are going to keep happening, and we're just going to keep having the same discussion over and over and over, and it's exhausting.
In my kind of thinking about sometimes you'll get like a lone ranger almost who just be there by themselves and will create an incident like this. But probably more often than not, it's usually a group thing, isn't it? Like we talked about this before in terms of hooliganism, Temujin and I. There seems to be in Europe, at least definitely in England, there seems to be a culture where people go to football games and their routine is go to the pub beforehand, get drunk, and then take some cocaine, and then go to the game, and then at halftime take another hit or whatever it is of cocaine, and then in terms of who's doing the behavior, you're quite right. Like a slap on the wrist is not going to change it, but do you think there needs to be maybe more of a police, not presence, but a police maybe mission almost to get into these groups, find out who they are, and then use all the technology at football's disposal to make sure those people never go to a ground anywhere ever again?
Yeah, one would hope that a lot of these bigger cities, at least, that's you got to start big, I think, because in lower, lesser populated places where you're not going to have as much of those resources, you may not be able to stamp it all out. But if you can show at the top, like in a London or a Paris, where we really want to get these people out of here forever, and we're taking the steps necessary to do it, then just go do it. Stop the lip service. Just go do it.
Just keeping in Paris, because that's where the game was held. Just one more rumor, because it's just always interesting to see how this particular story will go. It doesn't appear to be there.
Oh, yeah.
There you go. No, there you go. No, it doesn't appear to be there. I don't know why it keeps going to that. But
anywho,
let's forget that anyway. It's Messi rumored to be going from PSG yet again. Arguably the greatest player since Maradona. But where does he go from PSG, do you think? It's interesting to see, because we talked Ronaldo. You talked about how bad a move that was for all parties concerned. But Messi he's a different kind of player almost. He's a different personality, a different brand, so to speak. Where do you see Messi going? Does he go to Serie A and then tries his look at Serie A? Does he go back to Barcelona, or does he end up as part of Eddie Howe's Newcastle Revolution? Where do you see a player like Messi ended up?
As much as it pains my soul, I think the place that I see him will end up being City, kind of just putting more and more goals on Holland's plate as I throw up from that meal.
It's interesting though. If you, like, it's always that question of, for players like that, can they do it on a wet Wednesday night at Stoke? Do you think that if he did end up going to City, as talented as he is also nearly middle-aged at this point, would he have the physicality to cope with the kind of defending and the kind of pressure that only English football seems to bring to literally every single game?
I think he would adapt his game to make it work. I don't think he would bully people like he does in France and he did in Spain just by running by them. But I think as a generational talent as he is, there's ways that you can get around that. And still, I think if you talk about Ronaldo, he has just gotten so many calls and penalties just on his name alone. And I think Messi would get that same respect from the referees, whether it be always necessary or truthful. I think he would.
I mean, I've seen him live. I've seen him obviously lots on television. The man is an absolute genius with a ball. So intelligent, so clever, so smart. Daza says he can't see City going in for him, and the Prem defenders would smash the living out of him, which is probably true. But again, he's still Messi. Absolute genius, absolute legend. Alan says good morning. Right at the end. But absolute genius, so intelligent, the lock picker of all lock pickers. Do you think he could find out the truth about whether Kieran Trippier is the secret love child of Gareth Southgate and Harry Maguire?
If there's anybody to put on the case, it's him.
He literally is the Inspector Gadget of football. So we'll end on that because I want to stop thinking about Harry Maguire and Gareth Southgate.
Yeah.
I have to go brainwash myself before I go brainwash the state of Connecticut.
Leave all the deviant art makers.
Yeah, there's going to be carnage on Twitter now after this. Just remember to say thank you very much, Trevor. I think it's me and you again tomorrow morning for Alan earlier time of 8 a.m. Because there's no Tamucha for the rest of the week. And just for Alan, I did not bash Brendan today, but he is a better manager than Gareth Southgate. That's all I'll say on that one today. Good. Make sure you like and subscribe, guys. Make sure you watch all the videos from American Scouser TV. We will see you at AM tomorrow. Hopefully I will work out how tabs work on StreamYard. And yes, Trevor, I will see you tomorrow morning, bright and early, for coffee, tea, or the secret gin concoction that I drink.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody.